Yeah, we are.
I believe
Huh?
we are.
Wake up.
Hear ye, hear ye. Let it be known that the dignified council, Redevelopment Agency, and Public Housing Authority is now in session. Okay, we're calling this meeting to order. Let's have a roll call, please.
Director Jewell. Director Mahar. Here. Councilmember Director Schultz.
Here.
Councilmember Director Canada.
Here.
Councilmember Director Heckerman.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chairmember Prida.
Here.
Mayor Chairmember Chides.
Here.
Every quorum.
Now it's on.
Have a kiss.
It's the only kiss I have.
It's on now.
Okay.
Does it have peanuts?
Oral communications, this time reserved for members in the audience wishing to speak on agenda items. This period limited to 3 minutes per speaker, maximum time allotted 15 minutes. If you get over, you get shot. And you can't throw anything at the council. Anybody want to get up here and yak at us? Give us your name, address, cell number, whatever it takes. Nobody?
Okay.
Wow. Enthusiastic crowd. Okay. You have your cell number, please? Okay. Discussion item. This is item 1 is to conduct a workshop and discuss the City of Hawaiian Gardens' City Council, Community Development Agency, and Public Housing Authority mid-year budget review for fiscal 2005 and 2006. So let's roll.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council and members of the board, as you are aware, we go through this process every year, and the purpose of a mid-year review is basically to go over any changes that have occurred related to the budget that you folks approved back in June of last year. And I have a slide presentation where we'll go over the changes that we need to discuss. It should be rather brief, and if you have any questions along the way, just interrupt me and we'll try and answer them for you. Just to give you a little overview of what we're going to be discussing, we're going to go over city revenues. I'm going to discuss with you, since we really didn't know what the triple flip effect was going to be when we did pass the budget, what it is, what the effect is in our city, and you can see the exact amounts of it. We'll discuss any adjustments to expenditures, capital projects, and then we'll give you an update on the summary. The approved budget, which is shown on this slide, is the one that you approved for the overall city and the various special funds back in June of last year. You have revenues of $21 million, expenditures of $13 million. We had the debt service of $3 million and capital projects of $5 million. Then, if you'll remember, in August, I came back to you and said we had some money we didn't spend on revenues we didn't receive that we would be getting in the current year, of which we wanted to adjust the budget for those items there. They were not new items, they were just carry forwards from the prior year. So this is the revised budget you see in the right-hand column. For the current year, casino revenues, I'm happy to report, have again been higher than what I estimated. What I'm proposing to do here is we received $4,400,000 in revenues for the first half of the year. Doubling that comes up to $8,800,000. We budgeted $8,200,000, so we're proposing to increase the budget to $8,600,000. If we get more, it's a bonus, but I don't want to anticipate more than just purely doubling at this point in time. So, but we originally estimated $8,200,000 in the original budget. We're now taking that estimate to $8,800,000, and that's based on the first 6 months collection, which was $4,400,000.
Why don't we just save that money?
We'll go through the whole summer. You're actually going to spend a little bit of it, but not a lot. The triple flip. If you'll remember, last year during the budget negotiations and the Proposition 1A, I believe it was the pass related to city revenues and so forth, we estimated what we thought was going to be taken away in our budget, and we were pretty darn close, but I want to show you what the real effects of it are now on the city's budget. The first thing is sales tax. Our original budget was for $575,000. What is happening is that 1/4 of the sales tax we received is being paid to us through the county in January and June for sales tax in our property tax payments. So what we've done now is we're going to collect really $425,000 on a monthly basis for sales tax. We'll get another $150,000 for sales tax through the property tax payments in January and June, of which we got half of that $150,000 in January. And so so we'll still be getting $575,000 in total sales tax revenue for the year. It just comes from two different sources now, and in our budget in the future years, we will be putting this line item on the budget so you can see what's going on. Vehicle license fees is one that's a little more radical. We budgeted $700,000 for budgeted vehicle license fees. What's happened is we're not getting very much of that anymore because the actual collections, if you remember, back a couple of years ago, they reduced vehicle license fees by like 70%, and so we're actually receiving the hard cash for that on a monthly basis. Then what happens is twice a year again, January and in June, we get that money made up to us through property tax payments again. And in our case, we received half of it, but we got $760,000 is what we're going to receive for the whole year on that. The state, for purposes, is now taking $160,000 away from us because of the ERAF that was agreed to between the governor, the legislature, and the city people during Proposition 1A. That will happen for 2 years, that $160,000 takeaway. So I'm projecting, though, that we're going to receive net $800,000 now in VLF, so I'm increasing revenue on this one by $100,000. And this is just the way the numbers crank. So we've now got two items in revenue that will be increasing. The third item is the triple flip related to the Redevelopment Agency. This one is a little harder than what we expected, but revenues are a little bit better. But we're going to receive approximately $4,300,000 in tax increment. The state's going to take $392,000 of that money, and they're going to take that again next year as well. So the net of what we budgeted is proper. The thing is, I just want to show you the gross of both ways of how much we're giving back to the state. So the state's taking almost $500,000 away from the city and its redevelopment agency this year. Expenditures. In general government, we are reducing the city administrator's budget by $50,000, and this is purely for vacancies that were not filled during the first half of the year. And so therefore that money has not been spent, and it's purely a reduction because the vacancies were not filled. It has nothing to do with any cuts of programs or anything like that. It's that you authorized an analyst, and we didn't have an assistant city administrator, so that cost has been reduced out of here. And that cost is also split with the cost in Redevelopment Agency as well. So that's why you don't see more than just $50,000 or $60,000 here. In the city clerk's office, we have two adjustments. One is for contract services, which you previously approved. That's for the scanning that's being done by an outside vendor. And I think Sue can probably explain what the $10,000 in equipment is that we're going to buy. The other area in general government is non-departmental. If you remember, a few meetings ago, you approved paying the increased cost related to trash collection within the city for all our residents. That's $110,000, and we're showing that at this time so you can see the effect. Ernesto has determined that it might be a good idea for us to hire do some public relations. He probably got a more fancy term for it than I do, but that's an additional cost of $10,000 he's proposing. This is a proposed expenditure. He's proposing that we take the audio-visual person from part-time to full-time. The cost of that for the rest of the year is $30,000. And we're also proposing to upgrade our email and computer equipment and that'll cost about $50,000. Every now and then we've had a little bit of problem with the internet going down, but by this upgrade we would be much better positioned that way. So a total increase in general government costs would be $195,000. In public safety, based on the budget and what's gone on for the first half of the year, we propose no changes. Expenditures in public works, we're increasing the part-time budget. They incurred more hours than what was budgeted in the first half of the year, and the budget for the rest of the year is based on a 25-hour per each man working the rest of the year, and so we're increasing that budget $35,000. The overtime budget we have to increase. They've actually incurred more already than what their budget was, and so we're giving them an additional $5,000 to serve for the rest of the year. And then we're putting in there to fix up the baseball fields before the Little League season starts, another $10,000. In Human Services, we're reducing that budget by $90,000. That's a net of two items. We had budgeted a a recreation superintendent, which that position has been unfilled since Mr. Gomez has been serving as the acting Human Services Director. And at the same time, we promoted one of our individuals to Human Services Supervisor, so that increased the cost. But the net is a savings of $90,000. Community Development, as you probably are all aware, we've had to use a contract firm to do our planning. We have a flyer out to hire an associate planner. Contracting outside costs us more money. And if we're assuming that we're not sure it's going to be filled before the end of the year, so we put $60,000 in there to cover that additional cost. So instead of having an employee, it costs us $60,000 more to have used an outsider.
Are we going to fly that position?
That position's already been flown, as I understand it.
Yeah. So there may be some saving. There may be some savings there, or what?
No, it's actually costing us more money because of contracting out with a consultant costs more than having your own person. And we've flown it. This is our second time. It's our second time that we have flown the position, and we haven't found a qualified candidate yet. So we have to, most likely, we may be flying it again.
But if we can hire our own, then there should be some savings there in the cost.
Well, if you hire your own, yes.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, what happened the last time you flew it?
We didn't have any qualified candidates apply.
Didn't have any qualified candidate. Nobody wants 100% of their medical paid. What happened?
Nobody applied. Nobody applied that was qualified to perform the position as written in the job description. We had a lot of people that were coming out of college, or people that were real estate agents, or people that had nothing to do with the job description at all. And this is not really an entry-level position. It is a mid-management position. It does require at least three years of experience. I'll even take one. I didn't get anybody that was trying to move or upgrade from one city to another.
That's not good.
Okay, continuing on. The summary for the general fund changes is $220,000 total increase in cost. That's after both the savings and the increases that we've just mentioned. And that's less than 2% of your total budget, which is not bad when you think about how much money we're really spending. In the gas tax, we're increasing.
Budget.
Huh?
It's a big budget.
It is a much bigger budget than it was when I first got here, and we were all worrying about where we were going. The gas tax, we were increasing street sweeping because the contract had to be increased shortly after we passed the budget, and that's because the street sweeper had to have an alternate fuel, had to be alternate fuel, and so the contract went up because of that. And this is based on actually now what our monthly charge is per month, so that's the result of that. CDBG, we're reducing the estimated cost by $25,000 on the block cleanup. That's because the payroll costs have come down. They've reduced the number of people they've been putting on each of those block cleanups. It's also being proposed by the city administrator and the community development director that we add a part-time individual to code enforcement. That would be for the weekends and the evening hours and stuff like that. This cost this year shows as no effect because we allocated part of our associate planner to code enforcement at the beginning of the year in the budget, and we've incurred none of that cost since we haven't had an associate planner. We've just been contracting that and charging it all to community development. So that the net effect of that cost this year would be zero as far as what you're budgeted in your costs.
What's the rationale for adding a part-time individual to code enforcement?
Go ahead, Joe.
And members of the council, staff's asked for the part-time so that we can address most of the complaints that occur on the weekends, also complaints that, or at least some of the code violations that occur in the evenings. A lot of times when we try to do code enforcement during the 8 to 5 schedule, homeowners, property owners, or tenants are not home. So that does help to make communication at night when the property owners and tenants are home. A lot of the activity that occurs here in the city also occurs in the evening, rather during the day. There's been we've received a lot of complaints from Public Works also that there's a lot of illegal dumping out there on the streets, and that would help. Code enforcement would be able to help to educate the public on trying to get them not to dump out in the streets and in the alleys. And so basically to have somebody out there visible and being proactive and making sure that we try to keep the standards as high as we can.
You can't adjust somebody's schedule. Huh? Right.
That would have to be an item that would be negotiated
Yeah.
with the union.
Well, no, it had to be negotiated. File the MOU. Section that says you have a right to manage. Okay, I know they don't want to hear that, but you have a right to manage. You want to manage, you could go right ahead. You got that right to manage. Okay? You don't have to negotiate crap. You manage that. You know?
Get tough.
Get tough with those guys. They, they can't make their schedule. They can't walk up to you and say, I'm a rec leader. I think I want to work at 4 in the morning. You're the ones that, you guys are management. You guys are the ones that set their schedule. Should be able to set their schedules,
We don't have a problem adjusting the schedule if that's what we have to recourse to, but there is a need to have the additional man hours because there is a lot more activity out there, more than what's being handled at this time. I don't have a problem adjusting the schedule if you have to negotiate
Don't you have two
that.
guys? Don't you have two guys that do code enforcement? Have done it before?
I'm
They
sorry.
used to do
Previous
it.
experience doing that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay, continuing on. The Redevelopment Agency, remember we talked about reduced
Spend
personnel
all of our
costs?
money.
Huh?
So we're going to spend all of our money if we don't watch it.
No, there's a reduction.
Yeah, I was talking about this last one.
hold on. Is there something you would like to see changed then? I mean, our intent here is to increase our code enforcement and take a more proactive approach. And I understand what you're saying when you say, we have a right to manage. You're absolutely right. We have spoken to the union regarding this issue in the past, and basically they're in complete disagreement with us.
Let them file a
in
grievance.
relation
They're used to doing that.
to that issue.
They probably got a rubber stamp in there.
That's right.
Boom, there's another one. I got 500 grievances.
But that is one of the items that we are addressing in our current negotiations. So
That's no big deal. Let them file a grievance.
Well, I'm in agreement that we need to do something here because some of these code violations are happening on the weekends when there's no code enforcement
Yeah,
available.
I think
and
you
after
adjust your
hours.
schedule, you could probably get them on the weekend.
Should have someone cruise just periodically through the city.
I go to church every Sunday, and the same vendors are out there on 1 and 214th. I don't know how many times I've made that known to staff, And all you got to do is show up at 8:30, 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday and check out the vendors. There was like 2 or 3 of them this last Sunday, same spot.
Was there a proposed cost as far as adding that individual?
I think the estimated cost is $30,000. Mike, was it?
We have about $35,000 budgeted in there for the associate planner right now that we're not spending because we don't have an associate planner who used to also be involved in code enforcement. So we have that money for this year. Now, starting next fiscal year, obviously our budgeting would take that into consideration if there was a part-time individual working there, and also related to our, if we hire a planner by the start of next fiscal year. Okay, the next item is the Redevelopment Agency, and the only proposal we have there relates to that same discussion we had on the general fund of reducing some personnel costs for vacant positions of $50,000. So a summary of all of our expenditures is we're increasing expenditures as proposed a total of $180,000 from what we originally passed in the last budget. And considering we have a $24 million spending budget, that's under 1%, which is very minimal. New projects that we have proposed or one of them I think you actually authorized and we have to approve it here just to adjust the budget, is $30,000 for the Greenbelt study. And the other one is an upgrade of the city council chambers for $70,000. That would include ADA and carpeting in here. So we have a summary page, and by the way, you should have a copy of this presentation that I'm making, showing what the changes are. In effect, what we have is we would have $420,000 more based on these proposed changes for to put into the bank unless there's other spending to be done. Let me, though, summarize a couple other things. One, based on our proposed budget and where we're at, we were supposed to be at $3 million in the bank for our reserve that we've been setting up, and we should be there. That represents approximately 3 months worth of spending that we would have to cover us in that case. Our ultimate goal now, because we increased the casino revenue, is now $8,800,000, because our ultimate goal, if you'll remember, is to get 1 year's revenue from the casino into our reserve account. The other considerations that I have, or that we have, is the dead end project, and Joe can explain this better than I can, is going to cost $1.5 million more than what we originally projected at $3 million. And we would propose taking this money that we're going to save this year and using it towards that additional cost. Plus, we take the proceeds from the sale of the green property if that were to happen, and that would cover your additional $1.5 million in costs on the dead end project. And so that ends my presentation, but if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to clarify anything for you. And at the end of this meeting, after you've made all your decisions, whatever they may be, we'd ask that you make a motion to approve the adjustments to the budget. Thank you.
Make the motion to approve.
Second.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Well, now it's time for discussion.
I knew you were ready.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, I really am concerned. You know, you get that kind of increase in our budget. You know, I know that we can always find a way to spend money. We have an opportunity to try to hold the line on some of these items so that we're not spending so much money. So we can take some of this money and put it away, at least try to save some money. Certainly.
We definitely should have a reserve, and a good size reserve. Think about it.
Yeah. Right. And, you know, we're
So
just,
really pulling in
every
money.
year the budget goes up, and every
I
year
know.
we end up spending like drunken sailors,
Yeah.
okay? I mean, I'm sorry, but, you know, we can always find stuff to spend money on. And I think what we want to do is try to not spend the money to spend it, but spend the money, number one, wisely, and number two, save the money for some kind of rainy day. And, I mean, I can't imagine having a $22 million budget. $22 million budget? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, when you consider where we came from, you know?
I mean, yeah.
Just a few years back.
In this case, though, I might point out that one of the things that's different about our budget compared to most cities' budgets is that your capital spending here is quite large, which is the projects such as the dead-end street project,
Yeah.
the storm drains on Carson, the repaving of Carson Boulevard. So those are one-time costs as opposed to continuing costs.
Well, I understand that, finance director, but you know, those costs aren't general fund monies. You know, we bonded that money and got that money on a bond. Okay, so that's not necessarily general fund money. Okay, so you know, we're talking about some big time expenditures here, and you know, the budget's pretty big, and I think we need to try to hold the line on some of these items. You know, personnel, we're really, you know, we spend a lot of money on personnel. And there's not a great big breakdown here on personnel, even though personnel is probably one of our biggest expenses, if I'm not correct. Okay, for general fund money. Okay? I know that, that the departments might have found some savings with certain job classifications that have been expressed here on the screen, but I hadn't seen the other job classifications where they're spending more money. Overtime and part-time work.
What I did here, and when I went through and prepared this, is if there was no changes in the budget from what was approved to start the fiscal year, there is no comment here. What's happening is, and you get the schedules every month in your treasurer's report, is our personnel costs are coming in based on what you budgeted at the start of this fiscal year, other than for these changes. There has been...
Yeah, but the personnel costs in the aggregate.
The personnel costs in the aggregate will probably be slightly less than what was budgeted at June 30, to start the fiscal year.
But, it doesn't show a true reflection of what's really happening in our budget, unless we have some specifics. Okay, if you're going to show us, labor costs in aggregate, and you're telling me you got savings of so much money because you didn't have an assistant director or a superintendent over at recreation, you didn't have a assistant director over in administration. Okay, there are other costs, and I don't see those costs.
Well, actually, you get those costs every single month in your treasurer's report, and it shows that we've been incurring the cost based on what
we get, the 010 and the 030.
You get every single personnel cost, and we're running right online with what those were for the other departments. We've had 14 payrolls, of which we were running at a percentage of 14 to the 26 payrolls in our total payroll costs in the other departments. But we haven't done, and that's how, and I went through all of those and looked at every single one, and we're running right there, and you actually get that report every month as well. It shows that. So since there was no changes in any of that stuff, at a mid-year, our whole object is to say where we're having deviations from what you budgeted back in May and June when we had the workshops and authorized the personnel, other than for what deviations we showed you up here today. The ones in public works for the higher part-time and overtime places, and then the reductions both in human services and in the city administrator's office.
So where's your breakdown on, let's say, in human services? You say we get a breakdown every month in human services?
Yes, you do.
On 030?
You get it on
every...
every...
Run down and give me one. I want to take a look at it.
Sure.
The only thing I want to stress is that just because we get an increase doesn't necessarily mean we've got to spend it. We've always made the good judgment. This council's always made the good judgment to try to do what we can to find a happy balance between spending and saving.
Right.
And it seems like every time we get an increase, we're trying to spend some of it, and then we don't anticipate certain things, such as this aggregate amount of money that we spent for solid waste. Okay, things come up, and then we end up really in the hole if we don't watch ourselves.
Right.
Okay, we're fortunate, really are fortunate, that card club has done so well. Right. We've been on the lucky side, okay? But there comes a point where all of us have to get together and try not to necessarily, rely on luck.
Right, I understand.
We gotta rely on some kind of holding the line managerially so that we can get the job done.
Right, I understand, Mayor. And with all due respect, a lot of the expenses that are being proposed, many of them are one-time expenses, but some are recurring, such as making our audio-visual person full-time. There's been direction given to staff that we need to be up to date with our website, our PR program here, and part of what we've done, just to explain that to give you an example and understanding behind that, Bashir now, he's our webmaster now. So he's continuously updating our website and doing all the audio visual, all our special events. So he's been putting in more hours, and I mean, to justify us having to contract, or us having not to contract with other consultants, I mean, he can do it with, by making him full-time. That's one of the justifications there. But if we can go down the list one by one, and if you'd like an explanation of exactly what we're going to do and what we're proposing, we're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, well, I know that, we've flown that planner's position.
Right.
Okay. And that planner's position is a position that we should get filled. We shouldn't have any problem filling that position. Okay. With the kind of bennies and everything we got going for us, there's got to be some kind of reason why we're not getting a planner.
And we decided to go out and advertise that position again because, like Mr. Colombo said, we went through the interview process the first time, and we just really didn't see anyone fit to do the job for us that we need. So, and once again, it's not anything that we're not doing. I mean, we are doing everything we can to get these positions filled and get the services we need out there. It's just, unfortunately, we didn't receive any candidates that were qualified.
Yeah, man.
It's frustrating.
It's costing us money.
Right.
Really costing us all a gang some money here.
Right.
I mean, the money that we're saving in certain areas, you're saying we're spending it because we haven't hired anybody. And
Well, of course, I want to be sure that we have the right person when that hiring is done, too. I don't want to hire somebody and find out afterwards we've made a mistake.
yeah.
What publications are we using to fly that?
Bob, what publications are we using currently you want to come up?
Bob goes, man, I didn't know I had to speak.
We're currently using Western Cities, Jobs Available. We're going out to several local municipalities. I believe right now we have a list of 75, which is within the geographic area of Orange County, Los Angeles County, up into San Bernardino County. We're also putting it into, like, for example, job-specific publications. For this one, we put into American Planners Association publication and website. It depends on the job. Like, are we speaking specifically on associate planner?
In this case, yes.
APA, APWA, ICBO, what jobs available, Western Cities. Those are the more productive publications that we've received. We have flown several positions, sometimes two times, and it depends on the time of year, also on how the market is. Like, for example, when this position became vacated, as you know, the previous associate planner took an immediate retirement. So that by the time we got the position able to fly, it flew during the holidays. We were taking applications during Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. We reviewed the applications. There were some applications that were qualified, let's say at the assistant planner level. However, in reviewing the applications with Mr. Colombo, he decided, look, if we're going to hire this person, we want to make sure we got the best person available. I'd rather sit back for another couple months and make sure that we get the right person that's highly qualified for the position, rather than just kind of go with what we got simply to fill it 2 months earlier. That was the decision that was made at that time. We took in, I believe, another dozen applications. The position just closed last Friday, and we're currently in the process of reviewing the second applicant pool. By the end of this week, we hope to have, a list of people to interview, and hopefully fill that soon. We did fly it again. We flew it through New Year's, and it closed at the end of January, and we're currently in reviewing. In fact, as we speak today, Joe did the initial review of those applications, and we're going to review the top group with our city administrator. Hopefully fill that soon.
But Joe, do any of those applications look promising?
Second batch?
Yeah.
I happen to have them right here in front of me. I've started reviewing some of them, quite frankly, now. No. In the first batch, I did interview one person who was lived in Lakewood and worked in Manhattan Beach, but we wanted to make sure we had a selection of candidates to interview from so that we can put them before a panel and not just interview one person that we see just because they're, they had a bachelor's degree in planning. Again, for the most part, and you're more than welcome to look at these applications. A lot of people that have applied for this position are first-time planning positions or positions that or persons that have never had any type of planning experience. They do have the right type of degrees, but they have never worked in a municipality or been even an assistant planner. For example, I was just reviewing one here while Mike was speaking. They had a lot of environmental review, a lot of CEQA background, but the position is not about CEQA. It's about being an associate planner or an assistant planner, being able to assist people at the counter, being able to process land use entitlements, development applications, that sort of thing. It's not the same thing as that I've experienced in the past. I've never experienced this in the past, to be quite frank. It's just a bad time, I guess. And if we don't find anybody in this batch, we'd have to advertise again or just continue with the consultant.
Joe, on the salary range on that, is that up to,
I believe the salary range is up to par with the surrounding area. We did take a look. I think the position is adequately paid. The benefits are adequate. But we do have to have, good qualified candidates to apply for the position.
I agree. I don't want to settle for just okay. I want to try to
No,
get
because
the
this
best we can here.
person, once you hire this person, that's it. It's going to cost you more money
Seems to
in
me
the
we've-
long run
we've
if
been
you
through
don't
this
get
in
the
the
right
past.
person.
We've been through this in the past with some of the hires we've had in the past and come to rue the day that we did it. So I want to be sure that we're right in this.
It unfortunately does take time to go through this. It is a very frustrating procedure, but we do need to make sure we get the right type of person for this position. Otherwise, we're going to regret it in the long run, and it's going to cost you more money in the long run, and then I got to pay for it later on with all the complaints at the counter.
Oh, yeah, I understand that, but, I get some hesitation when I find out that, we have a hard time filling a position here. I mean, we've got excellent fringe benefits, and
We do. And Bob, I know Bob's been out of his way to advertise
what the hell's
this
going
everywhere.
on out there?
Wrong people applying.
Bob has, as
Well,
Bob
yeah,
stated,
sure, the wrong people apply, but why are the wrong people applying? You got to ask that question. Certainly, we're not doing something that isn't right.
Are we
okay?
flying? Are we flying the benefits package and what have you along with that to give them an incentive to?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's got to
Well,
be something we're not
Then
doing.
I don't know what it could be that we're not doing right.
go out there and drag them in here?
No, but
Other-
there's some planning. There's some schools too that have planners that are for careers. I mean, we could go to schools and talk to those folks to see what the heck they're doing. I don't think we haven't done any direct recruitment that I know of out of the colleges.
But Joe just.
Again, it's
telling
not an
us how-
entry-level position.
No.
Yeah.
So
no.
going-
I'm not saying hire somebody who's a new person straight out of college.
Saying
Okay.
graduate student.
Certainly, they have the resources. Those people locally at your colleges know people who are in this business. Teachers, friendships.
We've even circulated this
relationships.
among people that we knew within David Evans and Associates and Wildan that are two major consulting firms in Southern California. So the word's been, we sent the word around. And Bob has advertised this in all the traditional magazines that planners and engineers and public officials usually subscribe and read. So I know we've done that part. We went way beyond what we traditionally do. We've advertised this in the national chapter of APA, in the regional chapter of APA, in the local chapter of APA, which is something we've never done before. And in doing that, I noticed we got an influx of applications that were at the internship level. And again, I think, like Bob said, we have done quite a bit in the advertising. It's been bad luck, I guess.
Yeah.
We've advertised way more than what we've did when we hired the first planner that had just recently retired. But I don't, and none of these applications that I've observed, I haven't seen anything close to even a person being an assistant planner in the second batch. Unlike I saw in the first one, there was one candidate. But again, you want to see what other candidates you have out there, not just hire the one first person that you see.
Yeah, well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that, you know, that it would seem to me with all the benefits that we have
I know, I agree.
and the salary range we
Exactly.
offer.
I would agree. I looked at the benefits, I compared it to other cities, and it pays good money. The benefits are excellent, and like, part of the problem was that the first round was during the holidays, and that's always a bad time to recruit, but we didn't have a choice. We had to put it out there anyhow.
And I also, well, separate and apart from that, all he can do is keep swinging away on that one, I guess. I'm not going to turn around and beat a dead horse or anything, but, you know, it is frustrating because it's costing us money.
It is.
On the other hand, you know, this part-time person you want to make for a
Code enforcement?
code enforcement person, you know, I think if you keep somebody on the same hours all the time, then everybody knows to roof their house on the weekend. Okay? And I think you guys are going to have to break out of the mold, stop being the predictable scheduler that you are, and change the schedule of this code enforcement officer at times. You'd have to do it all the time, but I think you're going to have to do it sometimes. And there's a number of issues out there that are happening during the weekends and at nights, like you say. You know, that schedule isn't encased in stone. You know, you have a right to change it as a manager. So, I don't know. I'm not ready to approve any part-time position for a code enforcement officer at this time. I don't think it's really needed. I think what's needed is to turn around and adjust the schedule periodically of your existing one, and also, or put, you know, the other person who has code enforcement experience in that position.
I'd like to respond to your request a few minutes ago. I have with here the treasurer's report that we do each month, and it shows every single classification of salary for the whole city for every expenditure with budget, the current month expenditure, and the amount incurred to the year to date, and a percentage.
You know, the I guess what makes it kind of troubling is when you look at some of these numbers. You know, and There's a lot of questions concerning where we're at and in the budget with regards to people's departments and where they're at, because it's hard to determine. This is broke down into several budgets, so it's kind of unclear as to where we're at here, but at least for it departmentally, because you have it broken down by Leeward Park and C. Robert Lee. But
There's also a summary at the very bottom of how much human services is overall. It's in bold. Right at the bottom of human services, you see the total budget and what their percentage they've incurred to date is. You know, and it's around 51 or 52% because we've had 14 pay periods before December 31st. We'll have 12 after December 31st this year. And one of the things that also happens is our pay raise was effective September 1st, so the payroll will be slightly higher the second half of the year related to that portion. But on an overall basis, and I look at that both on individual departments and on an overall basis, the ones we brought up were the ones where the variations were way out of line.
now, are you going to?
You get that report every single month by month.
Yeah. Are you going to turn around and look at the end of the year? Are you going to turn around and how soon after at the end of the year are you going to give us a breakdown about where we stand? When we will know, at least when it comes down to personnel.
For the year, you mean, Mayor?
Yeah.
Well, I do that report basically about.
I mean, those are things you don't have to close out. Wait a couple of months.
No. I was just going to tell you, I normally do that report when I do the treasurer's report, which is about the 15th of the month.
Okay.
And you'll get that copy, and you got one last year for that. It's related to personnel costs too, because you requested that report, if you remember, about a year and a half ago. And the only month I don't put it in there is for July because our books are in transition for that first month. But every month after that, you've gotten that report showing exactly where we are on our personnel expenses for every single fund, special fund, and by department.
Yeah. You see, I don't mind if we're going to turn around and if we have a means, if we're going to hire somebody, if we can show a cost savings to hire somebody. I'm getting concerned after adding on.
Right.
You know, if we have a rationale to hire somebody because we have costs, I guess you'd say we have a position to consolidate or something like that, and we can add somebody on, then fine. Okay? And it's more effective for us. But to add people on just to add them on, man, that's, at this point in time, I think we're
The only, and we haven't started the new process for next year's budget, but we've always highlighted to you folks what new positions we wanted to add if there were ones that were requested. And in this particular case, for this mid-year review, the only thing we've really adjusted is we've adjusted down for some vacancies that haven't been filled, and then we're adding on converting the audio-visual individual to full-time, and then it was suggested related to the part-time individual in code enforcement. Those are the only changes that from the original budget.
How many employees do we have anyway?
Full and part-time combined is 80 because we had to fill out
80?
a form today related to that. But
80?
But it's about 50-50 is related to part-time and full-time. In other words, we have an awful lot of part-time people working down in human services. So we're I don't know the exact number of full-time, but it's in the mid-40s. And then the rest are part-time. But the total number works out to 80. And that includes the five of you in our employee count.
Joe, I have a question. If you rotate the code enforcement people that you have to weekends, weekdays, wouldn't you end up with a lot more overtime? Because they don't just go out there and check the streets; they have to do work too, right?
That's the issue we're dealing with now, Councilmember Canada. The union's claiming that no, if we schedule them on weekends, they would have to be overtime. Our argument is that, of course, like the mayor said, we have a right to manage, but that's up in question, and whenever the issue comes up, they've said that they're going to fight it. So that's what we're dealing with. But if there's a consensus, we can definitely pursue that avenue. and see where it goes. I mean, we do have a right to manage. That's been our position. But at the same time, like I stated, you know, the union's been very opposed.
Yeah, they bow their back sometime, don't they, when come
Right.
up with ideas?
Yeah, well, you know, it's you know,
And it's
tail wagging the dog here, gang.
and it's not only with the code enforcement position. I mean, there's other positions that, of course, I'd love to do the same thing with, but you know, we come to the same issue. But if there's a consensus, we can definitely hold off on the part-time code enforcement officer and practice our managerial rights and do what we have to do. Not a problem.
Does part-timers get,
Benefits? Yes, ma'am.
oh, they do, huh?
Yeah, they could.
What about comparison to other cities? Do other cities' part-time employees have benefits?
Well,
I can address that.
Go ahead, Mike.
It depends on the city. Some cities, yes, some cities no. That the thing is that if you work them less than 20 hours a week and they have not been put into PERS, which is where the benefits start, then the answer is no, you don't have to put them on benefits. The position of this council has been in the past that they feel that they deserve them, and so we've done things that way. They didn't think that part-timers shouldn't get them, you know, but I mean, that's purely up to labor negotiations and the planning of structure for new employees and stuff. But once a person's been put into PERS, we can't take them out, no matter
They
how
have
many
a
hours they're
strong
working.
union.
Betty, that's part of our MOU that was negotiated, so we don't have any choice in that.
And that part that's also being negotiated should be noted that the benefits really aren't exactly the same for full-timers as they are.
Right, that's correct.
Part-timers, okay?
That's correct.
That much I know.
Yeah.
Part-timers don't have as extensive of fringe benefit as full-timers, okay? And probably rightfully so. But, you know, you've got to look at this thing in a way that, you know, that you don't want the tail to wag the dog, okay? And apparently what's happening here is the tail's wagging the dog. And I think what we got to do is we got to be able to put schedules out and have people meet those schedules. We do that for people a lot of times anyway. Not that every, you know, full-time position works 8 to 5 when the schedule. Some of these people are salaried and you work whatever hours you can work. It's not a hourly position where you're scheduled 8 to 5, okay? There have been people who are here who worked past 5, okay, who are on salaries, okay?
That happens all the
Fair
time.
Labor Standards Act says they can do that. However, you've got to adjust their schedule accordingly, okay? And so, you know, that's done all the time. And what I'm saying is that, you know, the union has taken an unrealistic position on it. They're just, I mean, they're going to grieve if the electric light is over 100 watts or something. I mean, you know, the urinals don't work right. We're going to file a grievance. I mean, to me, it's just totally crazy. I mean, they're, you know, some of the grievances they file, they're just,
Yeah,
they
we
don't
have
really
too many,
render
really.
any.
Every
you
time
know.
you turn around, there's a grievance.
Yeah, and you know they're not using it as really. I don't think at times they don't see it as a matter of, you know, a grievance is a violation of the memorandum of understanding, right? If they believe management has violated the memorandum of understanding, they don't use it like that. Well, we don't like you. We're going to grieve you. Okay, well, you don't grieve you. You grieve it. That's the MOU. If there's a violation, if management has violated the MOU, that's what you grieve, this agreement that we got. And people forget that. They get personal with it, you know. They want to say, you know, I'm going to grieve you, or I'm going to grieve this, I'm going to grieve this person, that'll piss them off, or whatever. Even if it doesn't turn around and go anywhere. Wow, you know, I'll just grieve it, you know. And the thing is that after a while, we get so freaked out about it. I say, hey, you know what? Grieve it. You grieve everything else. What the heck? You know, but, you know, there comes a time when, you know, we're going to have to back management up at times, you know, when it comes down to being flexible to manage. After a while, we can't, you know, we won't be able to manage a thing.
That's true.
You know, so, you know, it's just a matter of, to me, you know, that, and it costs us more money, you know. So, well, we want a raise. You do? Well, you know, we spent your raise on the part-time code enforcement officer. How's that sound?
The people that are on salary, are they required to work a certain amount of hours a week?
Yeah.
40 hours,
30.
any, or
In our
30?
case, it's 37 and a half.
37 and a half hours.
37 and a half is considered
At least.
full-time?
Yeah.
But there's also such a thing as green time that they will get also. That's
But, they work that, there's no schedule. There's really, when it comes down to salaried folks, okay, it's, salary. You work 37 and a half hours. If you work 40, you still get the same paycheck.
So
You
what
know,
happens?
If you work, a lot of times, and when you work it, you still get the same paycheck. If these people work past 5 today, okay, then
They still get the same thing.
they used to get the same paycheck. They got to adjust their schedule because they ended up working at night. Okay, you can't use it. Fair Labor Standards Act says you can't use this time that they go over past their time to get away with not paying overtime. That's a violation of the law. A lot of people don't know that. You can't turn around and say, you know what, Sue, I want you to work 3 hours tonight, and it's past 5, and come in at 8 o'clock in the morning. If she says, hey, I'm not coming in till 11 because I worked 3 hours over, she has every right to do that. Okay? And that's just what the federal law allows. That's the Fair Labor Standards Act. So not only do we have the MOU, but we have the others. Look at everybody going, is that true? You should know, Steve, because I'll tell you one thing. I learned this personnel because I was over there handling all those guys over there, all their craziness. But I'll tell you, that's how I got to be the personnel officer here at this city because I studied so much in personnel. Fair Labor Standard Act is very extensive, but it changes at times. Okay, it changes at times, but it doesn't really change the whole part about salaries. Okay, but it does change stuff about overtime. I think Bush is probably changing some things about federal overtime.
they tried to change that.
They're going, you mean I can come in at 11? Yeah, you can.
Gee, thanks.
Well, some people do it anyway, and that's good. But
Some people
there's
like to push the envelope, just to see.
well, but when it comes down to that, it's what it's considered. There's a test that they get that the Fair Labor Standard Act have. Okay, it's called exempt and non-exempt status. Okay, and for these guys over here, they're all exempt employees. Okay, the finance director, the community development director, the director of recreation. I ain't giving you a blessing already, and the city administrator, another one, blessing. So, those are all exempt employees because they spend over 50% of their time in an office. Mm-hmm. Those guys sitting out there, the cops, they're non-exempt employees under the Fair Labor Standards Act, except for Mr. Fender. Okay? Mr. Fender is an exempt employee, I believe, and unless they gave overtime to a to a sitting commander of the station. But usually, your cops out there who are out in the field are non-exempt employees. If they get overtime, that's what qualifies them as a non-exempt employee. And to get the overtime, there's a test that you take. It's not a test that in normal means as we think of a test, but there's a means test in the Fair Labor Standards Act that states if you're an exempt or a non-exempt employee, and you follow the conditions of that test. Correct, Mr. Personnel Officer? Correct. So that's how that works. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
Okay.
That's why I say you have the right to manage.
Right.
And you can manage. We can either get a little bit courageous, or we can just, avoid the bloodshed. I say you got nothing to lose.
We don't have a problem at all doing that. I don't know if they have.
Now, let's talk about Public Works.
We're still on a discussion, Omar. Sorry.
Since we are discussing.
Yeah. So we'll have to do it with amendments if that's the case. Yeah.
Under Public Works, you have an
Yes, sir.
increased part-time budget of $35,000.
That's
Tell me
correct.
why. What has happened with that $35,000? Tell me what's going on with the increase in the part-time budget that warrants that.
What has happened is apparently, according to Mr. Vasquez, there was a slight confusion in respect to how many hours the part-timers were scheduled. He was under the impression they were scheduled, I believe, 30 to 35 hours part-time a week. And only to come to find out that they were only scheduled, I believe, 25, right, Mike? So what happened the first half of the year, he was scheduling them up closer to the 30-hour mark or beyond. Beyond, actually, right?
And how many public works employees?
Those-
do you have?
Those are for 2 part-timers. So the additional 2 part-time employees that he requested at last year's budget meeting to try and reduce our overtime. We've had some challenges in the Public Works Department in relation to both the part-time hours and the overtime budget. I'm currently conducting an analysis on the overtime. We're doing a study to see exactly how the overtime has been spent. It should be done actually by the end of this week. But we're going to take a close look at it and see what changes need to be made. Justification there, according to the department directors, that there's a lot of public safety incidents that take place throughout the city that they get called for, and instead of charging the public safety budget, they're charging the Public Works Department budget, such as traffic accidents, or they have to assist when there's some type of operation going on in the city. But once again, we're taking a very close look at the part-time hours and the overtime hours there, because we do have some concerns in the operations.
What do we consider part-time workers? How many hours a week do they work?
A part-time worker would work more than 14 hours a week and less than the 37 and a half.
Well, isn't there a law, the labor law, that you cannot work anybody under 16 hours?
No.
No.
It must have changed. Because
Yeah,
when I was
maybe.
making schedules, you couldn't work
It,
anybody
de-
under 16
it depends. I think
hours.
for minors, if
4
you're under
hours.
18 and you're in school,
Yeah.
you can only work so many hours too.
Well, yeah, the ones that were going to school, you couldn't work them over
Right.
no later than 9 o'clock because they had to go to school. But I guess the law must have changed because you could not work anybody under 16 hours, 4 hours a day.
Right.
Yeah.
It might have been in your MOU, in your contract, too. You were
No,
union.
we were union.
That's right.
Well, no,
Mayor,
it's the labor law.
to-
The labor law.
Mayor,
says
to answer
you
your
cannot work
questions,
anybody under 16 hours.
Well, no, they,
The amount reflected on the request here is so the employees can work a maximum of 25 hours per week, and that's it. I'm going to be meeting with the department head, and we're going to be taking a look at this very closely, and we need to be accountable for the hours and the time that we budget.
so I take it they've used all their overtime.
If you
Yes.
look at that report I gave you, you will see in the, as department number 4311 Public Works, you will note that in overtime they're $5,700 over the budget already for overtime, and they've only got $3,600 left for part-time hours for the rest of the year.
They've been over on theirs for quite a while.
Yep.
And there's you know, a lot of the overtime, I know firsthand that it's justifiable. You know, sometimes we have to board up a house on the weekend, or there's some big operation going on in the city where we assist with diverting traffic or any other situation like that. Any public safety issues there, you know, we do a good job of assisting. I hope the local sheriff's department, and there's costs there. So, but I just want to make sure that, you know, we budget accurately and that we're accountable for whatever monies we do put in there.
Seems like everybody got a Christmas gift in December. At $10,000 allocated for the year in the budget, and in December, is that a year to? No, that's not a year to date. That's December. $49.70 just for 1 month.
That's correct.
What happened in December?
That's what I'm gonna find out.
Wow.
We should mention that a total cost report, not just like I give you a summary of the cost if you're in front of that salary schedule there, but they get detail of their reports to department heads normally within 5 working days of the end of the month, so they know what the costs are that are running, and these things have been highlighted.
Here comes Santa Claus. Here comes Santa Claus.
No, here comes Scrooge.
157.7% of the overtime budget is gone, and it's December.
Been gone for several months.
That's 6 months to go.
Yeah.
Man.
I,
All right.
I've had inquiries from council members regarding that particular area, and you know, that's when we initiated the analysis that we're doing now. So I'll come back to you with a full report on my findings.
Yeah, it did seem a little excessive.
Joe's going to have to pull in the reins on that one, because that's totally out of hand.
How many employees does he have, full-time and part-time?
I believe there's 12.
12?
Right.
He's come a long ways
Yes, we have.
from where he was.
Maybe we're jumping the gun. I'm looking at the amount of part-time and full-time salaries in Public Works too, which is about $280 million.
Say what?
I mean, $280,000.
That's more like it.
$280,000.
That was a big slip.
Sorry about that.
His budget's spread over a number of departments. He has a budget here for salaries and part-time people. He also has one in Parks and Fields and if you'll notice on that schedule I give you, you got the second line there. He's also got a budget in gas tax for an individual or individuals. He has a budget in lighting and landscaping for personnel. There's some personnel related to
Gas tax.
In gas tax, and then there's somebody, as I remember, there's somebody also in the RDA budget itself. So it's spread all over. It's not just in in the general
but
fund.
Just in Public Works alone, though, if you're looking at this breakdown, you got about $280,000 with $10,000 overtime.
That's a big bite.
But there's not that much in overtime, comparatively speaking. But if they work over in gas tax, overtime's being paid out of general fund or what? Or no, they're charging it.
No, they charge it there, but the problem you've got in gas taxes, as you'll remember during our budget hearings, is that gas tax is subsidized by the general fund because we spend more in gas tax costs than we receive.
Anyway.
So it's general fund anyway, and the only one that's really not that way is lighting and landscaping.
Huh. There doesn't seem any rhyme or reason on overtime, does there? When you talk about percentage cuts.
I didn't hear you.
There doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason on some of these percentage cuts on overtime. Kind of looking at overtime, there's a...
I think when we did the budget originally, the overtime places that we placed it were in Public Works. We knew spent more time on overtime. There's some overtime that's spent for the bus drivers because of the scheduling there. I think there's a little bit of overtime related to the special events, and some overtime, a lot of overtime related to the block cleanup in CDBG.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we tried to estimate that based on where it's been incurred in the past. I mean, the finance department has a $5,000 budget for overtime, and I even try and keep that down, and that's purely when we have the year-end closings and then the year-end stuff for, like W-2s and stuff like that, where it takes extra time to do those things. But each department has a different amount of overtime depending on what we've seen in the past when we did the budget and so forth. And I know that the 3 city administrators that since I've been here have all tried to keep the overtime to a minimum. It's been a bug that they've been trying to get on, all 3 of them have that were here. Mr. Lopez and Mr. Romero and Ernesto here have all tried to put a handle on that one.
Well, I think any business tries to do that, should do it, if they're going to do their fiduciary duty to themselves and in our case, to the public. Try to keep the overtime costs down as much as possible. Of course, I know that we have to have it now and then. It's a must, but...
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, I know that, in special events that it's something that a lot of uncalled for things happen in special events. You just never know. It's some things you can anticipate, and other things you can't. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'd like to just add one comment. We do have to budget for the overrun in the overtime, if nothing else, because we've incurred the cost already. So, and what we did is we put $10,000 in there to allow for about 4,000 or 5,000 more for the rest of the year. So we've basically given only 4 or 5. If you want me to show that slide up there again, I can.
Now, if we stay with this budget with the expenditures that we've got, we're looking at how much of a surplus?
You're going to have an additional savings of $400,000 or more money in the bank of $400,000. I'll show you that slide.
Along with debt service.
$420,000.
$420,000?
Yeah, 420. If you look up there, you can see that.
All right.
And that's assuming we incur every dollar that we're saying in this budget, and the chances are we won't do that as well. We actually had a savings last year of some amount of money. If you've noticed on your treasurer's report, if you look at the first page there, you'll see that we actually have more than $3 million in the general fund bank account, of which your fiscal policy is the one that determines that you have $3 million, because you have $500,000 every year you put in there.
Right.
That's designated. There is some unreserved amounts of money that are in there because we get our biggest amount of money in the month of June in this city, because I will get the payment from the bond trustee that month. We also will get the second half of the triple flip in that month. And we get franchises at the second half of the year, and normally the casino's revenue goes up, so we see more coming in the second half of the year than the first half of the year. So there will be more monies coming in, and not always are all of the costs incurred that are in this budget. So that's the reason we're already over the $3 million, is because we were at $2.5 million at the beginning of the year. We were already over $3 million. So you haven't spent the money.
That was the debt service we're paying, right?
Right.
So can we take this?
What do you mean
money?
the debt service?
I mean, we have not a debt service. I'd say our savings plan, what we call our debt service, of $500,000 every year.
Right. That's part of that number up there in the $3,609,500,000
Right.
is.
So that we know is there.
Right.
Okay.
And we're going to have.
know that's our savings account.
Right.
Okay.
Can we increase that amount?
Can't we take?
Because that's not much considering what.
No, what I would like to
Let's
do.
not get too careful.
I'll tell you what I tell you what I would entertain. I'll go ahead. I would go ahead and vote on the motion, eliminating the part-time
Code enforcement.
code enforcement officer. If we take 400, that money, whatever money we have left, our projected money that surplus, and we stick it into our debt service account and save it.
I only have one caveat related to that, Mr. Mayor, and that is that you are going to be getting a capital improvement program projection where the dead-end street project is going to cost an additional $1.5 million over the $3 million we've set aside already, and I would suggest that that savings be used to help pay for that particular item plus the sale of the green property. I don't want to
That's a
spend
good
on
suggestion. I don't
And
mind
that,
that.
and that was a
It'd be a
suggestion I
carry
made.
So we
forward.
save it. I don't
Well, no,
care.
and that's,
Yeah.
that's the whole goal, and I proposed that.
That's fine with me.
Yeah, there's no additional spending proposed. It's just purely to put that aside because, and Joe can explain, and he probably will when you have the capital project come up, why the costs have gone up so much.
I just don't want us to spend it.
We can't spend it unless
Okay.
you approve it.
I know, but I just don't. I want to hold the line. Okay, I think it's time for us to try to hold the line a little bit. If we're going to make some more money here, let's take it and
And to be honest with you, if you look
try
at
to
this,
spend it on things that we've had plans for a long time. You know, we've got a number, like you said, of capital improvement projects.
and if you look at
Certainly, you're energetic.
And if you look at the budget, you know, and I look at it every month too, is we have been holding the line on what you budgeted. We haven't been going over. I mean, this is I mean, most of this stuff that we went over on, if you look, $111,000 of it relates to something we didn't know about related to the increase in the trash payment, if you'll remember. I mean, that's the biggest item of the whole thing that we have. Most of this stuff is not that way. So it's not like we see the department spending more money. Almost every department really is watching their budget now.
So, Mayor, you made a motion to approve,
Well, she made a motion to approve the budget.
but you want to remove the code enforcement position, right?
Yeah.
You want to amend your motion
Make
for that
motion, yeah.
with the amendment? There you go. Petra had seconded it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, roll call vote, please.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, we have to. Roll call.
Director Jewell,
Yeah.
Director Mahar,
Yes.
Councilmember Director Schultz,
Yes,
Councilmember Director Canada,
Yes.
Councilmember Director Heckerman.
Yes, and I would like to revisit this at a later date, though, if possible, you know, if this doesn't work out. Okay?
Mayor Pro Tem Vice Chair Member Prieta,
Here. Yes.
Yes.
Mayor Chair Member Chides.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. What else we got on the tree? Is that it? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to the 8th. Is that what it is? Is that a correct date?
February,
February 8th,
Next Tuesday.
6 o'clock?
So moved.
Okay, without any objection, so ordered. We're adjourned.